I'm a sheriff's deputy in a fairly busy county, so we see and hear strange things all the time that gives me the chills. There's an abandoned house in a rural area of the county that sits a good ways back into the woods. Every so often, our dispatch will receive a 911 call from a landline at the residence with nothing but white noise. The dispatchers ask if anyone is there, but they never get an answer. Since it's an open 911 call and we know the address, we have to respond, and every time we do, there is nothing there. The oddest thing is, there is no electricity or any signs of wiring going to the house. Every deputy that's ever been there gets a feeling of dread just being on the property. I'm working in the zone of this house tonight, so I'll try and go by and snap a photo of the house if I can. Update. I'm on the way out to the property. I found a vehicle driving on the wrong side of the road, so I'm at the jail finishing paperwork on the DWI. I will post pictures as soon as I can. Update. The following is photos and verification of the house and verifying that I am a police officer. I consider myself to be pretty rational when it comes to odd situations, but I am open to the idea of supernatural activity. Anyways, this was my first time walking up to this place, so it was definitely an experience. The trail is gated off, so I had to walk to it. It's about 200 yards back into the woods, through very dense brush and trees. I had to really watch my step, even with my flashlight, as it was so dark. I also jumped a deer on the way up, and it scared the living hell out of me. Once I turned the corner at the end of the trail and saw the house, my heart started racing, and I honestly felt like something was there with me. I started messing with my flashlight, phone, and notepad, trying to get a good photo of the verification with the house when I felt like I needed to leave. It wasn't a feeling of, I shouldn't be here, but more of a, you need to get the fuck out of Dodge now. I've been in very stressful situations in the past, and I've learned to trust that feeling. I got the best photos I could and walked as fast as I could down the trail towards my car. I'm almost embarrassed to say that I felt something was following me. I made it back to the car and sat with my spotlight pointed at the trailhead, waiting to see if something would come out of the woods. Fortunately, nothing did. I sat for a minute and caught my breath while I reviewed the photos, hoping I got something sufficient because I did not want to go back to that house. I'm about to go off duty, so this is it for today. I'm really interested in what the hell happened at this place, and I plan to do some research tomorrow. Update. I was able to obtain a few recordings of the calls from the house. In the description, you can find a SoundCloud playlist of the calls. Update. I've been doing some research between calls tonight, and I have some history on the property. The house was built in 1890, and the first deed on file was registered in 1901. The property has since been in possession of the same family that owns it today. From what I could find, the current owners of the property live out of state now, but have previously lived in the house or on the property some years back. The area it's in was a boomtown during the late 1800s, but fizzled out shortly after due to lack of profits from the mines. Other than that, I haven't found anything that makes the property stand out. On a more speculative note, the house sits close to an area where a Native American tribe was known to reside. Update. I've been debating whether or not to go back to that house. I've been in contact with a medium in the comments on the original post, as well as a few private messages. Her input on the whole situation was both enlightening and honestly, a little unnerving for someone like me who is not accustomed to such things. She told me she was in communication with an older man, a farmer, who resided in the house in the 50s and remains to this day in spirit form. She told me that he does not wish to move from the house because he likes the seclusion. The reason for the 911 calls was unknown to her, but she said the farmer wanted them to stop so that we would leave him in peace. She told me that he made people feel unwelcome at the house because he did not want any trespassers, but he would allow me a short visit on the condition that I bring a pack of cigarettes for him. However, she warned me not to overstay my welcome. More than a little skeptical, I considered the input but was convinced of the communication in the follow-up message I got from her. She described the counter next to the door and told me that is where he wants the cigarettes left. She also brought up the old convenience store several miles from the house. Without knowledge of the area or the house, there would be no way of knowing these details. After discussing the matter with my wife and a few close friends, I put the investigation on hold to kind of get my bearings about the whole ordeal. Today, I finally decided to return. I got up earlier than usual and got dressed for work. I got in my patrol car and drove 30 minutes out to where the convenience store was. I went in and purchased a pack of regular Newports and drove to where the trail to the house begins. Being day this time around, I did feel a little more secure, but still had that nervousness about me considering the situation. I stopped a short way down the trail and addressed the farmer. I introduced myself and asked for permission to come onto his land for a short while, and added that I brought a pack of cigarettes as a show of good faith. I stood for a second and listened, half expecting a verbal response. I didn't hear a voice, but the tension I had felt prior to addressing the man seemed to dissipate. I continued to the house and gave it a good once over, and it did not look any different from when I had last left it. I took several photos of the front of the house and walked towards the open door. I addressed the farmer again and told him I was going to place the cigarettes where he had asked, and said I was going to take a few pictures. As you can tell from the photos, the interior of the house was a little more than spooky. I placed the cigarettes on the counter and walked into the kitchen area, where I noticed something in the corner. I shined my light and saw a very old photograph of a woman sitting on the shelf by itself. The rest of the house was mostly empty, so it seemed like the photo was deliberately placed and left on the shelf. On the kitchen floor, I found an old phone laying in a pile of trash. I chuckled at the irony of it, then began looking for any connections. The ones that I did find had been severed, but that's not to say there aren't any underground lines that could be causing the issue. When I rounded the corner, I saw the stairs leading up to the second floor. Nope, that was the first thing that crossed my mind, and I moved on into the living room. I had now been in the house for close to 10 minutes, and at this point, I started to feel the tension that I had felt before returning. I walked through the living room through the passageway that led behind the stairs. As I turned the corner towards the back room, that's when I heard 3 loud footsteps directly above my head, as if someone was on the second floor landing of the stairs. Either I had overstayed my welcome, or there was something in the back room I was not supposed to see, but I was not about to stick around to find out. I quickly left the house and began to walk down the trail towards my car. As I was leaving, I decided to take a photo of the second-story window in hopes of catching something. I took the picture and walked back to my unit and realized I did not feel a presence behind me as I did the first time. When I got to the end of the road, there was a car parked beside my unit with a lady in the driver's seat. When she saw me, I waved and she got out the car to meet me. She was a resident of the area and wanted to make sure everything was okay. I told her I was just checking the property as an extra patrol due to the 911 calls we had received. When I asked her if she knew anything about the property, she said she only knew the owners live out of state and no one is ever there. She did tell me that she had been in the house before and began talking about the cellar in the back room of the house behind the stairs. Given what had just happened, this really piqued my interest. She said the rumor around the community is that there is a bear that lives in the cellar due to loud noises coming from inside, but no one knew for certain. I thanked her for her time and went to the office where I started to work on this update. I know one thing for certain. Hell no, I will not go back to that house. No, I will not go search the cellar. Whether there be a spirit of an old farmer in the house or something else, I am not wanted there, and I don't intend to push my luck. The trail on the info of the house went cold, and I haven't found any way of contacting the current owners or their family. We haven't received any more calls to the house, and frankly, I hope we never get one again. Now, before we end things here, I just want to share a few other creepy encounters that happened early on in my career. At my first department, you had to be vetted through the jail in order to become a patrol deputy. I started in the jail when I was 20 and served a little over a year as a jailer before being transferred to the patrol division and sent to the academy. The jail in question was built in the 1960s or 70s and was falling apart when I was working there. It was a small jail with 3 housing blocks and held a capacity of roughly 60 inmates. My first few weeks I was there, I was put with a senior jailer so he could show me the ropes. Before I started the night shift portion of my training, I had several employees tell me the story of a jailer who was attacked by something in the booth, which is called the control room, where we were all stationed. The story was that the jailer was working on paperwork late one night after all the inmates were locked down, and he kept feeling something brush his neck. After he felt it a few times, he turned around and saw a dark, humanoid figure perched up on the shelf behind him. As he stood, the figure supposedly jumped at him, causing the jailer to run down the steps, out of the door of the booth, then into the corridor to the booking room. The dispatcher who was one room over at her station saw him, then supposedly called an ambulance because he was unable to speak. The whole incident was allegedly caught on camera, but nobody knew where the footage was. I didn't believe the story one bit, and I brushed it off as a trick they play on the rookies. Once my training was completed, I was placed on the night shift by myself. After several weeks of working on my own, I became comfortable being the only one on duty in the jail. I was even at the point where I would play checkers or cards with inmates if they were awake after lockdown. Once everyone was in their sleep in their cells and I had done my watch tours, I would go to the booth, shut the heavy metal door, and turn on the old TV we had. I was going to college during the day at that time, so if it had been slow and no one caused any problems, I would set an alarm on my phone for the next hour. One night, I did my checks, set my alarm for 2 a.m., then dozed off as I had done many times before. This time, I woke after what felt like 30 minutes to my inmate worker pounding on the plexiglass window to the booth door. Startled, I jumped up, unlocked the door with my key, and asked what happened. The trustee told me that he had heard screaming in one of the blocks. I ran to each cell block and was alarmed to find every door had been unlocked. I shined my light in every cell and confirmed everyone was asleep and where they were supposed to be, and quietly locked the doors. When I found out that everyone was alive and well, I returned to the booth to find out what had happened. Upon looking at the control panel, every door in the cell blocks had been unlocked manually. This was obviously a strange experience, but as I said, It was an old jail, and the control panel had seen better days. I chalked it up to an electrical malfunction, and the scream the trustee heard as an overactive imagination. Morning came, and all the inmates emerged from their cells to get breakfast. None of them appeared to be injured or complained of anything happening in the night. The next few months go by relatively well, with nothing worthy of mentioning. One morning, around 5 a.m., my trustee was sitting on the steps of the booth, keeping me company as we drank our coffee and preparing for morning med call. As I finished my paperwork, I caught a glimpse of someone walking around in one of the cell blocks through the booth window. Annoyed at the thought someone had managed to get out of their cell, I looked at the control panel to find every door was still locked and secure. I looked back through the window and saw a brown-haired man with a short brown beard, wearing an orange inmate uniform, slowly walking around the block with his head down. He made the second lap and walked behind a pillar, then didn't appear on the other side. I popped the block door open from the control panel, exited the booth, then stormed into the block ready to chew this guy out. When I entered, nobody was there. I walked around the block, shined my light in every cell, and checked every door. I also checked the showers and under every table. Every door was secure, and no one was out of their cell. I looked at my trustee, and I could tell he was just as confused as I was. He told me he saw the guy too. At breakfast, I looked at each inmate as they walked up to see if they were the ones I had seen in the cell block. Nobody came close to matching that description. That morning, I brought it up to one of the dispatchers who had worked there for 20 years. I described to her the man that I saw. Without a word, she pulled out the calendar, pointed to the date, and said, "Yep, that's him." Surely she saw the look of confusion on my face because she laughed and told me what she meant. She said the description of the man I saw matched that of a man who had hung himself in the cell block several years back on that day. She said he was a repeat customer, as we like to call repeat offenders, and was always hired as a trustee due to his work ethic and good behavior. She said the last time he was brought in, he was a different man, fighting with the jailers and other inmates, talking out of his head, and acting absolutely insane. She went on to say that one night, the man took a sheet, wrapped one end around the door of the food slot and the other around his neck. Then he leaned forward, causing him to asphyxiate and die. The dispatcher claimed the spirit of the man was the one haunting the jail, and he was the one that attacked the jailers several years back. I began to believe in the haunting after that. As time passed, I experienced several odd occurrences, including office chairs spinning on their own, catching a glimpse of someone looking through the booth window when no one was out, and shadows moving across the walls. Inmates would sometimes report seeing someone in orange walking past their cells in the middle of the night, and a select few, unfortunately, they said they awoke to a third inmate in their two-man cell watching them as they slept. I later met and befriended the guy who had been attacked by the entity. He refused to talk about the incident, but he would say it was no joke. When we attempted to poke fun at him about the incident, he would become visibly upset and would walk away. Everything in this account could be explained away by electrical malfunctions, sleep deprivation, and a number of other contributing factors. That being said, there are some things that cannot be explained so easily.